Hi friends, I'm here today to make a autumn Peekaboo Pop-Up card using the new Peekaboo Pop-Up die paired with my very favorite fall set, Happy Harvest. I just love that cute little scarecrow, and of course I have to use him every year. So I'm going to start out by coloring my images. I've stamped them in lawnfawn jet black ink on some Nina Solar White cardstock or some lawnfawn white cardstock, and I'm using my Copic markers to color him. So I'm starting out with some blues for his overalls. I'm using a B21 and a B23. And I've just gone all over with that lighter blue, and then I'll pull in some shadows with that darker blue. So I've got some shadows at the bottom of his pants and the bottom of the pocket, and then I'll go back with that lighter and just kind of pull that out and blend them together. For his hat, I'm going with some reds on this one. I've got an R24 and an R27. So I'll start out with that R24 and then pull in that R27 from the sides to kind of give that look of a rounded hat. For his shirt, I'm using some greens. I think this has a really fun fall look, this green color. This is a G43, a G24, and a G21, and actually I pulled out that G43. I'm trying to read my colors for you because I realized that there's a little bit of a glare on my marker tops there. So I used that G21 and then the G24, and then I blended back out with the G21. And I'll add some details to his shirt here at the end. For the straw, I'm using the Y35, and then for the face, I'm using an E00, and then the E02 kind of gives it that darker color, and I'm especially using that right under the hat for a little bit of shadow. I've just got an E23 for the post, and then I just used a dark gray for the buttons. And now I've got a really thin Copic multiliner, and I like to add details to my scarecrow. So I'm adding a little bit of crosshatch lines to his hat to make it look sort of like straw, even though I know it's a red hat. And then I'm adding some stripes or some lines to his shirt to kind of make it look like a plaid shirt. And I'm doing double lines, so they're a little bit thicker and they kind of have that sketchy look, 2 lines beside each other. Now I'm moving on to the crows, and I just like to use some warm grays. I don't ever use black when I'm coloring a black critter like this. I want to use a dark warm gray so that I don't completely lose the line details. It is going to be pretty dark, but I'm using that dark mostly in the shadow areas, and then I'll blend back out with that W5. So you can see that you can still see the eye pretty good. I've got that Y35 again for their beaks, and then I'm using this trio of yellows to color my sunflower. So Y32, Y35, and Y38. I use these yellows a lot. So I started with the lightest on the full petals, and then I'll put that mid-tone for the shading. And then for the back petals, I'm using that mid-tone, and then I'll go back in with the darkest and add a little bit right in that crease between the petals. I'll also add a little bit right around the center. And then for the middle, I'm going to use that E23 all over, and then I'll come back in with that E25 with just a little bit of shading around that one side. Now for my little pumpkins, I'm using Y38 for the light color and YR04 for the dark that I just pull up from the bottom and down from the top. For that larger pumpkin, I'm going to color it a little bit different, a YR16 for the lightest color, and then I'll pull in the YR07 for a darker color. And then for that other little pumpkin, I'm going to color him in kind of a creamy color. So you get those kind of like those white creamy pumpkins. I think it's really fun to kind of throw one of those in sometimes. It just gives you more variety. So I've cut my pieces of the Peekaboo Pop-Up, that large piece, from some Bristol cardstock. This one is cut in half, and then I'm just going to use this Grassy Hillside border die to cut the top edge. So this is going to be the part that's in the front, and then that full piece is going to be my background. So I'm going to do ink blending on this Bristol cardstock, starting with some scattered straw which seems very appropriate for a field where the scarecrow is. And I'm going to go over this whole piece with scattered straw. Now you could, of course, use some colored cardstock for this if you're not into the ink blending, but I love ink blending something, especially on a fall card. So I've got my scattered straw all over, and then my other favorite color to use for fall and making that, you know, kind of crunchy dead grass is this fossilized amber. So I've gone all across the top, and then I'm actually going around the sides. It really does make that stitching detail kind of stand out nicely. And I've sort of left a lighter area there towards the bottom. That's where my sentiment's going to go. So I'm just going back across the top with that fossilized amber again, and then I can go back to my scattered straw blending tool and just blend out between the two. So now that I have my base colors down, I want to add some texture. For this, I'm pulling out Distress Oxide ink. This is Rusty Hinge. I've just smushed that onto my craft mat and added a little bit of water with my paintbrush. I'm just going to pick that up and flick it off the block or tap it on the block to get some small orange splatters and give my hayfield some texture. So now that my hayfield is done in the foreground, I can work on my background. I'll just trace a very light pencil line on this background panel to give me an idea of where my grass line will be. I'm starting out with the color that's basically going to be the middle color of this background, and I'm just going to put that all through the center of my panel. This is Salvage Patina Distress ink, and I'm just putting a nice line through the middle. Then I'm going to work on what comes up from the bottom. So this is Broken China. This is going to peek up just over the top edge of the grass. So you can see I'm going to keep grabbing my inked grass piece and laying it on there to make sure that I pull this color up high enough so that you can see it. Now I might not have needed to ink it all the way to the bottom because this panel is going to be over it, but this kind of card actually does kind of open up a little bit so you can see down in there, and that's just kind of an added detail to make sure everything's inked and you don't have any white showing. Now for the top of the sky, I'm using Wilted Violet. This is not always a color that you use for sky, but I just think this gives it a really cool kind of autumn, dusk, about to be sunset sort of look. So I've just pulled that down from the top, and then I'll go back in with the Salvage Patina and blend between the two. So there's not a lot of that violet, it's just at the very top. Now I have some clean water, and I'm just tapping my paintbrush to get some splatters. Then I'll put a clean paper towel down on it and sort of pick that up so I get some lighter areas and texture in my sky. Then of course I want some gold splatters. This is a harvest sky we're creating here, so I just think that some gold harvest splatters look great in that sky. And it matches with my hay down below very well. So now that things are dry, I can sort of start to assemble my Peekaboo Pop-Up. So the die creates these score lines, and I am folding along the score lines. They're only on one side. The first one folds into a valley, the second one folds into a mountain. So you can see how that's going to work. Now before I fold my other one, I realized I needed to make my little arm that's going to pop up match my background so that what little of it you see matches what's behind it. So I just took a piece of Bristol, cut that out, and inked it up with that Salvage Patina. Now I'm going to fold along the score lines for my large back panel. So I'm folding that first one in a valley and the second one in a mountain. It kind of goes opposite of what's on the other side. So you can see how that is going to work out there. Now before I put this on my card, I obviously want to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. And I've got my hand on that score line so that I can see where the center is of the main part of the panel. So when the card is closed, this is centered. I want to center it between the right edge and the score line, not the whole panel. Now before I start to assemble things, I want to go ahead and stamp out all my corn stalks that are going to be in the background. And this is a quick way to stamp out a whole bunch of them. So I die cut the shape and I have a negative space in my piece of paper, and I'm lining up my stamp with that die cut shape. Now I can cut a whole bunch of blank ones and just stamp them really easily by dropping them in that negative space in that piece of paper in my MISTI. So I'm just inking this up with artichoke ink, and then I'll just stamp a whole bunch of these. So you're going to see me make a whole bunch of corn really fast. So it's really easy to die cut all those white ones over there, and then I can just stamp them versus having to line up the die every time. So this is just a really fast way. My only problem with this was because of the shape of it, it was hard to pop out easy, so that's why I have to keep grabbing my tweezers to get them out. But I only stamped about 6 or 7 of these because I wasn't sure how many I was going to use. So here are all my pieces and I'm ready to start assembling. So I'm going to fold on the score lines that are created by the die for the little arm here for the Peekaboo Pop-Up. You're going to end up with this sort of triangle shape. And that's where the adhesive is going to go. Before I adhere that to the front panel, I'm going to add some double-sided tape to the part that adheres to the back panel. Pull off the liner paper and you just line that corner up. Now I can add the arm that moves to this little panel, the little skinny panel. And I'm just adding that adhesive to one of those little triangles. So that little triangle I'm moving there, that's the only place the adhesive is. And I'm going to line that up with that fold line. So it's going to fold down, and then when you pull it, it will pop up. Now I can start to add all my elements. Now I did not glue the right side down yet, where the two panels connect on the right side, because I want to put all that corn in the background and I don't want to have to work around all this stuff that I'm putting on the front. So you're going to see me flip that panel back and forth. So it'll kind of make sense as to why I haven't done that yet. I'm adding my sunflower to the little arm that pops up. And you can see now why I wanted it to be the same color as the background. And I'll just trim off the part that's going to stick up above my sunflower head. So you can see how that's going to work. It's going to hide and then pop right back up. Now I can add all the rest of my elements. So I have this little crow that's going to sit on his arm. And then of course I have my pumpkins, and you're going to see here in a little bit that I'm going to add a couple other pumpkins as I go. And I folded this over so that I could kind of look at what the composition looks like when the card is closed, so that it looks nice and balanced. Because you can see when it's open, everything's going to be shifted to the right. So this is what I'm looking at for it closed. You can see I've got, it just looks like a nice card front that you would normally do. Now I can start to add my corn. And I wanted to add one on this piece right here so that it looks like it goes all the way edge to edge. I didn't want that little piece right there to look like it was missing something. And then I'll add my corn to the far left, and then I can start to fill in between them. But this is why I didn't glue all this down yet, because I kind of want to see where my images fall when it's open and where it falls when it's closed. So I'm going to move it around a lot, and I'm going to kind of fit these in the spaces in between. I'm going to pull this panel forward out of my way so that it's not kind of a pain to glue things down. So you can see here, I put that one there so that even though the sunflower is going to end up there, I want it to look nice and full when it's closed. I also don't want this piece to be too covered up when it's open. So you can kind of see why I left it sort of open at the moment to move back and forth. That piece that I just put in there, you're not really going to see when it's open, but you definitely see it when it's closed. So you kind of have to work back and forth if you're going to do something like this to see, because you're kind of creating two different scenes that move. So it looks pretty full when it's closed. That sunflower fits in that little void I left perfectly. And I thought about putting one on this panel right here, this little arm, but I didn't like the way it kind of stuck out. When it's closed, you would see the back pieces, and obviously I don't want to trim that off. So I just abandoned ship on that idea, and we're not going to put one there. I'm ready to close everything up though, so I've put some double-sided tape on the other side of my front panel. And then I can just close that up. Everything lines up, and here is how it works perfectly. Now, these are the cloud dies that come with the Peekaboo Pop-Up. I wanted to kind of fill in sort of the dead space up in the sky a little bit, and these worked out perfectly. So there's a large cloud and two small clouds. And then I also colored another crow that was flying so I could add it to the sky, and another little pumpkin. So you can see how I'm, again, moving it back and forth, closed and open, to make sure these pieces work in both respects. Like that little cloud there, where I had it initially, I saw that when it was closed, that side panel on the right would cover up part of the cloud and make it look like it's cut off. And of course, I don't want it to look like that. I want it to look like you see everything when it's closed, just as you would when it's open. And that's why I also colored this other little pumpkin, because when you opened it, there was nothing. And this kind of actually, surprise, there's another little pumpkin in there that you didn't see before. So not only do you get the surprise of the sunflower popping up, but kind of the expansion of that scene. And then here is my finished card. I love how it turned out. It's one of my favorites also because I use that cute little scarecrow that I love so much, but I just love that sunflower that pops up. It's so fun and unexpected. I also really love all that ink blending. It's so pretty. So this would be a great card even if it wasn't a Peekaboo pop-up. So I hope that you take some of the things in this video today and use them in your fall cards. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye!